Wow, my mind is blown. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Scott here, and today I want to share with you something that I found pretty recently, and I'm absolutely shocked at how good it is. I've been a loyal Lightroom and Adobe user for absolute years now. I think 2007 is when I first started using Lightroom and Photoshop, or Photoshop before that, but when Lightroom first came out, that's when I first started using it. And I never really needed a reason to change. Lightroom always did, the best that I thought, sort of adjustments and cataloging and all of the things that sort of came along with Lightroom. And then a couple weeks ago, a team from Skylum contacted me and said, hey, you should try out our new software called Luminar 3. And I was like, no, I've heard of that stuff before, and it's not going to be a Lightroom replacement. And even though it might not be a replacement for me, spoilers, it is an absolute beast at editing photos. And if you are the kind of person that doesn't want to rent your processing software from Adobe or anybody, you strongly need to consider downloading Luminar. In fact, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it right now. Pause this video, go to Luminar's website and download the trial. At least download the trial. Put it through its paces for the 10 days that you have to work with it for free. And then if you like it, go get it. It is absolutely amazing, what this program can do. And I'm just going to show you just a little bit of kind of the things that I found out working with it. This is the third time that I've been trying to record this video. The first time I absolutely crashed and burned. My mouth was agape the whole time. I didn't know what I was saying. The second time I tried to recollect my thoughts and do it again. It didn't work. But this time, the third time, hopefully we'll get some semblance of a video that you can enjoy and sort of get something out of. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the things that I found in Luminar, and I'm going to show you sort of the things that I think it's good at and sort of the things that I don't think it is as good at. Because there are definitely some things that Lightroom's algorithms are a little bit better at. So let's dive in and take a look. All right, so we're presented with this when we open up Luminar for the first time, and I apologize, I will probably be saying Luminar and Lightroom interchangeably. It's just the way it's going to be, so I apologize. If I find the errors while I'm watching the video, I will just flash Lightroom or Luminar on screen so that you don't get that confused. All right. So we're looking at Luminar here, and it's very similar to the way Lightroom looks. I mean, the libraries are not that dissimilar. To bring photos in to Luminar, you don't really need to even import them. So that's one of the major differences between Luminar and Lightroom, is that you don't actually have to import photos. All you really need to do is point Luminar in the direction of where your photos are already at, and you can basically do whatever you want to get the photos from your flashcards onto your hard drive. You don't really need to do anything else other than that. So if you're using Windows Explorer or Max Finder to just dump the images on your computer, as long as they're in a file structure that you see fit, you don't have to do anything else. Whereas Lightroom absolutely needs to be directed, and you can import obviously from Lightroom. And anyway, I find that that's a little bit better because there's a live link between the folder structure. And if I add something to that folder structure outside of Luminar, it will pick up that new folder structure. It's basically like syncing your folders, which is kind of cool. It's not perfect. You still don't want to move stuff around outside of Luminar. That's still bad, just like it would be in Lightroom. But I feel like that's a step forward. Lightroom should definitely take a cue from that. So let's just point Luminar in the direction of some pictures. So I'm going to go to File. I am going to Library, Add Folder. And we are going to go to the desktop, and there is a folder here that I've created called Luminar. We'll just open that up, and then here are the images that are in that particular folder. In Lightroom, it's very similar. We'll just go to Lightroom here, Import, and we want to go to the desktop, Lightroom versus Luminar, and we'll take that folder and say Import. A little slower to get stuff into Lightroom, and this is really just for comparison's sake, right? We're not going to go through like everything, differences between the two. So let's go back to Luminar. And so there is a couple things that Luminar is missing in terms of like its organization, and this was a pretty, I'm guessing, brand new thing. I don't think that Luminar used to have a way to organize and catalog images, so they've come a long way with their shortcuts and folder structure and all that kind of stuff over here. You can also do albums, which is something that you could do in Lightroom as well, making collections of photos. And then there is a way to sort through this stuff here, but that's not really the kind of crux of this whole thing. We want to look at how to develop the photos. I mean, cataloging in that respect is kind of it's a moot point, because the algorithms and AI that Luminar is touting, that's the stuff that you guys want to see, and frankly I want to show. So let's go up to edit, and so this part of the program is a little slower. Rendering the images, I think that Lightroom renders the images a little quicker. Let's go back to this view here. And I want to take a look at, let's look at this image here from Valley of Fire. So we open it up, our big screen, takes a couple seconds for it to render, and then we're going to go over to the edit panel and we're going to edit this. You'll notice straight off the bat that on the right-hand side of the screen, it looks very similar to Lightroom. So let's open up Lightroom and let's go to this image and go to develop, and you'll see sort of the same thing here, right? We'll get rid of this panel down here, so we kind of look almost exactly alike. So we have all of our tools, or what Luminar would call filters on the right-hand side here, and you see basic, tone curve, HSL, split toning, detail, lens corrections, transform effects, calibration. And then with Luminar, we don't really have that. There are different, I guess, palettes or filter sets, right? With Lightroom, you can't really control, well, you can, but if I right-click on Basic and hit Customize Develop Panel, we have this, and this shows us basically all of the options that we have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's it. And we can, this is something new to Lightroom. You can customize where they go and all that kind of stuff. But in Luminar, if I go to filters and click on it, actually add filters here, we have, 51 different filter sets to work with, which is kind of amazing. And all of them, aside from the raw develop, you can use filters with, or local adjustments like graduated filters and brushes and radial filters and masking and all that kind of stuff, which is like, okay, mind blown, number one. You can customize this to your heart's content, right? So I'm gonna go up to filters and I'm just gonna hit delete all, and then you can add your own, right? So if I go to add filters here, and I wanna add some things. Actually, I have one here called Lightroom Basics. So in the workspace here, if I click Lightroom Basics, now this is something that I've created, you will need to do this. But I added, let's collapse all. I added all of the things that would exist identically in Lightroom, or, semi-identically in Lightroom. So the raw develop is obviously the first one. As we would have in Lightroom, that's our basic panel. And the basic panel, I guess, in Luminar sort of does just the tone and the white balance. That's it. So if you wanted to do saturation and vibrance, that's a separate panel. You want to do D-haze, that's a separate panel. And actually, lens corrections, which is something that is a separate panel in Lightroom, is built into the raw develop in Luminar, which is kind of cool. All right. So first thing that I always do is autocorrect for distortion, chromatic aberration, and defringing. So we'll just enable all of those right off the bat. The other thing that's kind of cool is if you, in Lightroom, if I do that, right, let's just enable these two, and I hit the backslash key in Lightroom, I get the before and after, right? But I have to click it twice. Something interesting in Luminar is that I can hold the backslash key to see the before, and when I let go, it shows me the after. So there's already a big difference here, as you can see, right? Here's before and after with the Luminar lens corrections, and in Lightroom, here's the before and after with the Lightroom lens adjustment. So I'm not quite sure what profile it's trying to grab here. I have no way of telling it or asking it to do anything like that. And when I zoom in, we still get a little bit of that chromatic aberration. It's not a whole lot. There's a little tiny bit right there. Let's see if Lightroom does any better. Yeah, a little bit. Let's go before. Oh, there it is in before, and after it's absolutely gone. So Luminar, not quite up to snuff when it comes to the lens corrections, but that's okay. Again, it's a minor detail. Hopefully they'll figure it out in the future. Not a game breaker for me. So let's go back to adjust. Again, we can see that this works very much the same way as Lightroom does. So you'll be very happy if you're Lightroom familiar. So let's, drop the highlights, increase the shadows, and increase the contrast a little bit here. Maybe bring up the whites and bring down the darks. And already, things are working very similarly. So we can close the raw develop panel. I'm not going to touch saturation and vibrance just yet because I usually say that till the end. Let's see what the D-haze slider does. That's pretty good. I will say this from other experiences. The D-haze algorithm that Luminar uses is not as good as it is in Lightroom. So let's take a quick break real quick and show you the differences. I'm going to actually back out of this and go to this image here and go to edit. And we'll go to from Quick and Awesome to Lightroom Basics. And we are going to scroll up to D-haze and just put that all the way at 100%. And we're going to go to Lightroom and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to that same image right here, go to develop, go to basic, and then do the D-haze on this one. So you can definitely get a much stronger result in Lightroom. I think it's similar, but I don't think the algorithm is quite as good as it is in Lightroom. Again, not a game breaker, I'm okay with that. Again, it's just, Luminar does so many other things that are very good that Lightroom doesn't do, and we'll see. All right. Also, one thing to note, takes a bit of time for Luminar to update the thumbnails. If I go back to the grid here, the thumbnail sometimes doesn't quite render properly with the adjustments that I've made. In fact, here, we see the before image, or I don't even know what this is. It's not before. Irrelevant to actually editing, because this is what I want to see anyway. Who cares if it looks like that for, a fraction of a second, but whatever. Just a small note. Let's go back to edit. All right, so we got D-haze. Here's something interesting. Advanced contrast. This is a pretty rad tool that allows us to adjust the contrast in separate tonal areas, which is not available in Lightroom, which is why I rely heavily so much on the D-haze filter. So this is kind of cool. And just playing around with these, can do quite a few interesting things here with our contrast. So let's park that. Well, we'll just leave that one down, and then shadows, we'll bring the contrast up here. Right there, that looks pretty good. HSL, I'm not really going to touch that with this particular image because I think the color's already fine. There also is a color contrast adjustment in the filters area here. Color contrast, where are you? It's the other thing too, it's a little difficult trying to find where stuff is because there's just so much here. But I mean, see, I'm doing it again. I'm losing my place. So let's not worry about that. Let's get out of here and do something a little bit more familiar, like detail enhancing. So detail enhancing, Lightroom has all of the detail enhancement. Let's go back to that image so we can compare here. So let's try to process this the same way. Okay, so basic, we got highlights down, shadows up, D-haze, okay, and shadows up a little more, whites were up a little bit, and blacks were down a little bit. Let's raise these all the way up here, okay. That's really all we've done, and in Luminar the result is a little better. So let's go back. Detail. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here and I'm going to throw the sharpening up a little bit just to show you kind of the differences between the two. So this looks okay. let's go back to Luminar and zoom in on a spot here. And we have 3 different panels in Luminar to do sharpening. We've got a sharpening panel, which is great, but we also have this small details enhancer, which is phenomenal. It is phenomenal at increasing detail in wherever you want it to be increased. So that's a little high, 37. Let's back that off to about 15 or so. We have a medium one, which we can adjust medium details. We don't really need that up. And then large for, I'm guessing, like the big pieces of detail. I guess that would be more like clarity. So we'll leave that kind of low as well. Protection I haven't quite figured out yet. There's no way to tell. In Lightroom I could hold the Option or Alt key to increase or decrease the masking, or what they call protection. Can't really do that here. Hopefully they'll figure that out soon. I can zoom back in here and I can do sharpening. Now this is another cool thing. You have a D-halo adjustment here. So if I go back up to here, we can see on these ridge lines here, there's some haloing. So if I go a little bit too heavy on the radius, there's D-halo off, and then I can use the D-halo slider to get the halos until they disappear, which is, again, wow, mind blown, like so awesome. So let's back out. Denoise is another great tool. You have luminosity and color. Again, it's very similar to Lightroom. You have vignette, and this is sort of the end of my kind of basic toolkit in Luminar. I mean, this is kind of where Lightroom ends. So where does it get better? Well, let's collapse all of these filters, collapse all, and let's add some other ones. All right, so we've added a bunch of new stuff here. Accent AI filter, golden hour, image radiance, Orton effect, color contrast, and adjustable gradient. These are just a few of the 51 that you have available to you here. So let's see what some of this stuff does. Accent AI filter. Let's just raise that up. And it appears that it's kind of figured out that like where the balance of the sky and the foreground is. So I'm getting a boost in this kind of foreground kind of darkness here without having to use a grad filter, which is phenomenal. That's how I would have to change it in Lightroom, because Lightroom doesn't have an AI filter. It's kind of crazy that it kind of knows like what's what. Golden hour, I can add sort of warmth from the sun kind of coming in these highlighted areas here. Again, I'm not quite exactly sure like what this algorithm is doing, but wow, it's pretty amazing at what it can do. I'll turn the saturation down to 0 and we can raise this up and kind of show you what it's doing. This looks a little bit more natural. Image radiance, this is crazy. This is like exactly what I do in Photoshop. My Orton glow is very similar to this. So I can turn on image radiance, and it's basically like blooming the highlights to make them kind of appear like they're folding over your landscape. I mean, just unbelievable like how this works. We can turn the saturation down on this as well. And again, like with, just as in Lightroom, I can turn all this stuff off. So I don't want Accent AI on, I can turn that off. I don't want Golden Hour on, I can turn that off. I don't want Image Radiance on, I can turn that off. We'll leave it on, I like the effect there. Okay, that looks good. Can warm it up just a little bit with that. And then we have Orton effects, which is along the same lines, it's slightly different. We can turn this on to type 2, which actually brightens it a little bit, instead of type 1, which typically like it's like soft light or hard light, I would imagine, between the two. So we get a little bit of that soft focus. By the way, there is also a soft focus filter, completely separate. We can turn down the amount here. Color contrast, I can increase the color contrast. I mean, this would require a little bit more tweaking, but that's an option. And then we have our adjustable gradient, which we can adjust these 4 things. But like I said, like if you want to adjust a specific one of these to be a gradient, all you got to do is just click this little button here, and you can add a brush, radial mask, gradient mask, or luminosity mask to each one of these filters. And you see that it works on all of them except for the raw develop. Like, hello? What? Crazy. So I am absolutely chuffed that this program exists. It's just unbelievable, like what you can do with this. I mean, again, like, oh, wow. And then here's our before and after. And I haven't even gotten into the layering yet. Like, this is just one layer. I can add multiple layers here and do different things across different elements of this particular image. It's unbelievable, like, what you can do. If I was finished with this image, all I would have to do is go up to File, Export, and then I can export it exactly the same way as I would in Lightroom. However, the one thing that I don't like about this is that there's no preset, so I can't just click a preset to have it, you know, do the same thing over and over and over again, which is kind of annoying, but again, it's not a deal breaker. Let's hit cancel. All right, I do want to show you one other thing here, just to show you how kind of powerful this AI is. If I go back out to here and let's look at this image, you notice with this particular image we have some sun stars, the sun star effect. Now obviously we've gotten this in camera, but I wanted to show you how kind of nuts one of these particular filters is in Luminar. Maybe if you didn't have a sun star, maybe you're shooting at a much lower aperture, you want to bring in a sun star and have ultimate control over it. Like, check this out. So let's go to edit. I'm not going to do anything else to this image but add the sun star. Okay, so we're going to go to filters and I'm going to hit delete all, and I'm going to go to add filters and I'm going to go up to the top here, and where are you? Sunrays. It's in creative. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to click place sun center and I'm going to drag this over to where the sun is. Now look at this. Luminar knows that this is the sky, right? So you can see the sun up here in the sky. If I drag this down over do you see what I'm seeing? Like, what is going on here? Skylum, this is magic. You are a witch. Like, it knows that there's an object there. Like, what? Like, this is so crazy. Okay, I'm done. Let's move it back over here to this side. And you can see again, like, it makes the shadow from where the object is darker. All right, let's put it over the sun here. And all right, so there's our before and after, sort of with this filter. That is unbelievable. This algorithm that they're using for, like, I mean, look at my face. Like, I'm just blown away. Okay, so there's only a couple things that I really don't like about Luminar. One of them is how it deals with distortion. We already saw a little bit of the kind of, you know, lackluster performance that it gave with the chromatic aberration and the lens corrections. Again, that's not a huge deal breaker, but the one kind of problem that I think that they could do better at is the algorithm that they use for the vertical distortion or horizontal distortion. So I want to show you this image here. And every time I shoot interiors, I can never quite get the all of the converging verticals to be perpendicular, right? No matter how hard I try to get the camera level to what I'm trying to shoot, I can't ever get it perfect in camera. And I mean, say what you want about it, but I just can't do it. So we're gonna go back to our Lightroom Basics panel here. We're gonna go up to the top, and I'm gonna do lens. I'm gonna do my lens correction, get it to kind of untransform itself. Then I'm going to go to the transform area here. And where this sort of window lacks is in a guided or auto algorithm approach to getting rid of this vertical distortion. So in Lightroom, I have the ability to have Lightroom kind of figure out automatically what the kind of vertical distortion needs to be at, or I can do it manually with a guided kind of point to point. And in this particular example, over here on the right, this looks pretty good, and over here on the left, this looks pretty good, but this counter, you know, above counter cabinet right here is not perfect, and there's not really a great way to kind of get rid of that distortion. But in Lightroom, I can do that far more effectively. So we're going to switch over to Lightroom here. We're going to go to that particular image. I am going to go to develop, and I'm going to go down to transform, and I'm going to say guided. And what I want to do here is with this guided tool, you'll see I click guided. I can hit auto, and that already does an amazing, perfect job. You can see right over here, this line is straight, this line is near perfectly straight, and this line is near perfectly straight as well. Let's hit off and do guided. So I'm gonna hit guide, and I am going to draw a line here and kind of bring it down to here. And then on this side, other side of the image, I'm gonna draw a line here, and I'm gonna bring it down to here. So what that does is it's going to make sure that these two lines are parallel, and then I've got a perfectly straight sort of correction, I guess you can call it, like, you know, in my image, which is not something that you can do in Luminar yet, I will say. So hopefully they add that in. All right, so let's go back into Luminar. We got pretty close here. I obviously would need to, you know, crop this to get rid of it. There's not really a way to have it auto crop, which is, again, like, you know, if you're listening, Skylum, add that in. The one thing, though, that I really don't like about it, and that I've just come accustomed to using in Lightroom, is that when I click on one of these things here, I expect it to just go away. Like if I go back to Lightroom and I hit basic, it drops down, and when I hit basic again, it goes back up, right? And I have an option in Lightroom, if I right click, I can say solo mode, because I only want one open at a time. But in Luminar, the default to this is everything expanded, and I don't like that. The other thing that I don't like is that I can't move this window over, right? I can't increase the distance between, you know, these 2 points from here to here. Whereas in Lightroom, I have that ability. I can maneuver this panel to the left or to the right to kind of get it as wide as I need it to be. And that kind of increases the range that I have to move the sliders back and forth. Whereas in Luminar, I don't have that ability. So that would be something really cool to see in the future. I hope you guys are listening. Okay, so let's go back out to the kind of basic area here. We're not going to talk really about anything else in this particular video. I just wanted to show you and share with you like how awesome I think this program is. It does an absolutely amazing job with different, you know, a different approach than Lightroom. I imagine that with a little bit of time that I can get the same kind of looks out of Luminar that I could with Lightroom. Things are just organized slightly differently, but they're not organized differently enough to make it a painful experience. There's just a bunch of new things that do kind of cool, you know, adjustments that you're gonna need to kind of figure out on your own. But in terms of adjusting the images, there's not really a big difference at all. You can make Luminar act just like Lightroom, and that is sort of nice in the beginning, but they're two completely separate programs, and you should treat them as such. Luminar is probably going to be really good for certain things, whereas Lightroom might be good for others. However, that being said, if you are a Lightroom and Photoshop user, Luminar might not be for you. I don't know. I can't make that decision for you, but if you are ingrained into the Adobe infrastructure, it would be kind of neat to give Luminar a try. Luminar also acts as a plugin for Lightroom and Photoshop, which is really cool. That's a really good job, Skylum. I'm glad that they did that because it doesn't leave people out in the dark. It's not a direct replacement. They're saying that you can use it in addition to your workflow, which is, I think, again, it's a really, really smart idea. The second thing that I want to mention is that if you are using the Adobe products and you don't want to pay a monthly fee for this because you may not use all of the features, or maybe you're a person that just bought into the Adobe infrastructure to get Lightroom and that's really all you're going to use, there's no reason why Luminar can't be your #1 go-to product. It is equally as good at almost everything, if not better at some things and slightly worse at others, than Lightroom. It is an absolutely amazing replacement, especially if you're only doing raw processing. And at a price of only $70 US, I mean, like, I am amazed that this product is so cheap. Now, Luminar did give me the software for free. I think I have to mention that. They did not tell me when I was reviewing it, to give them a positive review or a negative review. As you saw, I tried to be as objective as possible. There are some things that Lightroom is better at. There are some things that Luminar is better at. It's just a matter of how you choose to edit. But you cannot ignore that this product is pretty amazing, even though it does have some shortcomings. And I think it's even more amazing that it's only $70. I will put a link in the video description below if you really want to try it out. I highly recommend you go get the free trial. If you like it after that, there will be a link in the video description for a $10 off coupon that you can use when you purchase it. It's just SD10 off. And I really hope that you guys at least go check it out and try it. This is an amazing product. I hope that you're gonna like it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button down in the bottom. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Why the hell not? And I hopefully will see you guys very soon. Go check this out. This is really cool. Happy shooting, guys. See you later.